I'm Alvaro.
Kavi.
Ethan.
I'm Devin.
I'm Lena.
I'm Talisha.
First question. Oh wait, we don't even need to speak because we need the time.
What's our professor's name again?
C.
Yeah, that's
Now we have to restart it.
No, we don't.
Then just cut it. Just cut it.
Okay, we're starting at 1:10. We'll keep this in mind.
Both Plato and Aristotle are suggesting that
We
education.
say our names.
We already did say our names.
So you say-
okay, now we should just restart now for sure. Like,
No,
No, we just cut it.
don't. We're not restarted, but we're cut it. So
Just
just
cut it out.
3,
Yeah.
2, 1.
Names. Go.
Ethan.
Kavi.
hi, I'm Alvaro.
I'm Devin.
I'm Lena.
I'm Talisha.
Okay. Both Plato and Aristotle are suggesting that education is an important part of moving towards a happy and good life. What do they each convey on this matter?
I'll start with Plato and kind of how in the allegory of the cave, he presents education as a journey from ignorance to enlightenment.
Mhm.
As he represents the cave as, this world of illusions where people are trapped
Right.
in their limited understanding of reality while they're down there. And then when they go up the stairs through, metaphorically, right, education, contemplation, the individuals in the cave then come to know the real world once they're kind of blinded by that enlightenment.
Yeah.
And then true knowledge and like the highest good will exist kind of there.
Yeah.
And he says it's important for a happy and good life because Socrates believes that if you know everything, if you have unqualified knowledge, you will not make any wrong decisions. You'll always make the right decision.
Perhaps, but then could you only have unqualified knowledge in all fields or just in a specific field?
True, because no one can be unqualified in everything. Right?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. And then there is also, sometimes this new knowledge can be like at times too much, like when he comes up the stairs and he's blinded by the light and he has to adjust, and that adjustment period lets him see the world in a new way. Where with the cave, it's he now gets to see the world with the sun shining down instead of being in a cave, which kind of reflects like new information changing your perspective.
Wait, so do you really think you can leave the cave multiple times? I feel like it's a really singular thing, like a singular event.
Like once you leave, you leave.
Yeah, cause you're saying you really think there's multiple enlightenments?
Cause the way
I just don't think that one enlightenment will supersede another in the sense that it's like, oh, I heard this thing and I think this way, and then after that I heard this other thing which makes me think this way, and it's not necessarily, they're not mutually exclusive.
I just think it's like a movement from one lifestyle to another. Like, so you're going from this complacency and ignorance to wanting to pursue knowledge, and that's the only difference.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, like to piggyback off what you guys said, like for Plato, like all he knows is little shadows, and then he gets free, and then he starts walking up, and the sun hits his eyes. So I feel like it's barriers you go through, like a bit, like as you're learning, and as he gets up there and faces the sun, he can't see it at first, but then he adjusts. I feel like as he was going up those stairs, he was learning new things, and he like got used to it. He overcame it.
By the time he had kind of like actually exited the cave.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh wait, so why does Aristotle think we need education for a happy and good life?
To know what's right and wrong.
That's the same thing as Socrates, though.
Aristotle argues kind of a more practical approach and believes that the good life is one lived in accordance to virtue and reason. He specifically names the good life as eudaimonia, which can be understood as
The good life.
as the good life and
Yeah.
kind of acting to pursue our virtues.
Yes, activity of the soul that expresses virtue.
Right. Like having everything all figured out, basically.
Yeah.
Those virtues like courage, generosity, or wisdom can be examples of those, and they encourage people to live well.
But then they go like how the French story goes from courage to like looking like a clown.
Exactly, because virtue, you always have to have the intermediate between extremes.
Yeah.
Right, where it's
From excellence to intermediate between extremes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it would be like, for example, if someone was a fool or to be like too like out there, or if they were a
versus,
coward.
versus being
and
a
then
coward, right?
In the middle would be courage.
Excellency would be encouraged in the middle.
Like for example, like you're jumping off a cliff, you go from like being a coward from not going to jump, and then you jump and you make it. You have courage, but die, you're gonna be known as that guy that died, and that's kind of like a clown. So, yeah.
So you kind of just need like the knowledge to know when it's virtue and when it's vice, when it's too much or too little.
So how does Aristotle say we get that knowledge to practice, right?
Yeah,
I believe
you just
so.
gotta I think it's like self-awareness, just like understanding yourself, understanding the world. And then,
You wanna
did
move
we
on
already
to
talk
the
about
second
number 2
question?
as well?
No, we did. Well,
Cause
to number 2.
Plato provides a hint of what the good life looks like in the allegory of the cave. Do you see this represented in Aristotle's reading? If so, in what ways?
Did we already talk about that?
We'll talk about it again for a little bit,
Mhm.
how the connection, you know. In Aristotle's work, the idea of kind of moving towards the good life, it's obviously not as dramatic and emphasized literally as Plato's metaphorical journey from darkness to light, but there is the overall concepts have similar emphasis on moving to kind of less virtuous states to higher forms of like eudaimonia, the good life, in Aristotle's point of view, right? But they both kind of are analogous to each other. Just one's more literal and visual, and the other one's more practical and kind of reasonable.
I think they both agree that the good life is based on like what you actually do with your life. It's not based on like how much pleasure you're feeling or like
Right, yeah.
what
Exactly.
you're
Yeah, 'cause
managed
he
to
talks-
obtain in your life.
Yeah.
Talks about like
Yeah.
pleasure has nothing to do with like
Happiness,
wealth.
right?
it has nothing to do with your good life. right?
Yeah.
It's a good life.
They're because they're material things or
Yeah.
whatnot. But they have this common, between the two of them, Plato and Aristotle, so there's this like common understanding of if you dedicate time to learning something, it will therefore make you better for it, as opposed to like a concrete reasoning process. It's more about the immersion, I think, they focus on, as opposed to
The immersion.
how you the
The
immersion.
process.
A
So,
process,
like,
especially when it
focusing on the
comes to
process.
gaining,
Insight.
learning stuff and knowledge, or
They also
The
kind of
good
talk
life-
about unqualified.
The good life
yes,
is something you do.
qualified and qualified.
They were talking about
Yes, yeah.
unqualified.
Good
yeah.
life is something you do. That's what they both agree on.
And
So they
then
were, go for it.
Aristotle also mentions like the things that cause you to do wrong is impetuousness and weakness as well.
Yeah, and being
Or lack of mastery, acrasia.
right, yeah, crazy.
And that's how it goes above Socrates' theory of just
Yeah, Socrates didn't really take into account those kinds of things. It would have just been like,
you just didn't know, bro.
And the fundamental needs too. Aristotle did touch on that. If you want to touch on
The fundamental needs, he mentions how like social needs, water needs, you all need
Yeah.
stuff like those to make the decisions.
yeah,
that. So they're still considered agents, but they're
Yeah.
not considered, I guess, able to partake in pursuing the good life or the virtuous.
right,
Because
yeah,
they're like physically stripped of that ability.
right, exactly.
And then they also talked about unqualified knowledge, which kind of is complete knowledge, right? So
yeah,
like once
knowledge
you,
not based on
so it's like the seatbelt example where it's like
right,
I know to put on my seatbelt, but I don't know like why. It's kind of the
Right.
deeper reason of
right.
something, right?
The quality would be knowing at least you have to put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, they know
Because you know it's
what to
dangerous,
do.
you know,
Right.
the experience behind it. I feel like
Right.
unqualified knowledge really comes with experience.
Yeah, but to have nothing to qualify that knowledge makes the knowledge right and complete.
Exactly.
That's the distinction.
They also their motivation they focus on motivation as well. With character as kind of the agent. So, because
Yeah.
they focus on their motivation behind reason, similar to Kant.
In a way, but I'd say theirs is more character based
Yeah.
than Kant's real like.
Yeah.
What do you mean to do?
based on what you-
What are your intentions?
Move on to number 3.
No, Plato didn't talk about motivation at all, bro. I just got yanked out of that cave. Like he had like no reason to do it.
in what ways is Kant's approach to, oh, no, wait, did I skip one? 3? Okay. Why is the distinction between a hypothetical imperative and a categorical imperative important for Kant's moral theory?
I think we should start by defining kind of what they both are.
Or what the
Yeah.
moral theory is.
Yeah, so the moral theory in total would be what he calls the piece of work that he wrote, the categorical imperative, because we were talking about yesterday.
Well, it says how is the categorical imperative important for Kant's moral theory?
Right, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
important because it's the method he uses to determine morality, I think is like the super basic way of saying it.
But yeah, but we have to talk about the distinction between a hypothetical and a categorical.
Well,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
start by defining
Right,
both
so
as
to
what
make the
Okay.
distinction between the work he wrote called the categorical imperative versus the terms categorical imperative and hypothetical. Right, so the term categorical imperative is doing something as an end in and of itself, right? So, pretty basic, like, you don't want to kill for the sake of not wanting to kill, or you don't want to steal for the sake
No,
of
that's the second formulation.
That doesn't mean it's not a categorical imperative, remember?
It's just like an example of it.
Yeah, we'll get you more
Okay.
exemplified of it,
Because
imperfect.
The other one means something else, like how I said, like I'm in school right now. This is in my ankle, man goes to have a career.
Remember actually the chart.
What are we talking about?
I was like,
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh yeah, so, so if the
So then a hypothetical imperative would be something that you want to do. So let's say get your degree, right? That's a hypothetical imperative. It's just something you're motivated to do.
to get to something else.
it's a means to something, so
Yeah.
that it's good
It's
in
not-
comparison.
Yeah. But it's not something
It's
you
an action
necessarily
based-
like have to do or
It's
like,
an-
you
it's
an
can't
action
ever
based on
violate.
Right.
Achieving some particular end.
Like a hollows work, or like hollows work to pay rent.
Mm-hmm.
We work for ourselves to us to pay rent.
And then in turn, we also only pay rent so we can have a place to live.
Yeah, unless we want to be homeless.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool enough.
And then he uses the hypothetical with the categorical to like contrast it for a better understanding.
Exactly.
And then good actions should pass the test of the universal law and the rule of ends in themselves.
Right. The
So that's
first
specifically
formulation.
in categorical imperative.
Mhm.
And for universal law, it basically describes would it be okay if everyone acted this way, every agent or everybody acted this way. It kind of applies it to every situation to see and ask if that's okay. It's a very much more clear kind of answer. If that's okay, then it would be, and if it's not, then it's not for your individual sake.
Yeah.
And the second one would be ends in themselves.
Mhm.
Someone wants to talk about that?
Well, did we not discuss that? Kind of.
Not yet.
Okay. And that would be the categorical imperative.
Yeah.
Things that are ends in and of themselves. So doing something as an end in and of itself. Let's say a car crashes on the side of the road and you want to get out and check to see whoever's alive. There's no inherent benefit to that. You're not doing it for something else. So that would therefore make it a categorical imperative because it was an end in and of itself. The act was to get out of your car to check and see and save whoever crashed the car.
I don't think that's what it means. I think the end in itself means it's been defined by three things. It's defined by someone's inherent human value, pretty much. So it's like their practical reason, their autonomy, which means their free will, and then it means their intrinsic value as a human being.
Right.
So what ends in themselves means is something can only be good, really, or pass that test of the end in themselves test and be a categorical imperative if it respects inherent human value and rights.
Mhm.
So that would be, for example, like
No, that's why you have to respect everyone as an end in themselves.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's not.
Because they
what
have
it means.
inherent human value.
Yeah, because of those three things that she said. So practical reasoning, they have practical reasoning, they have autonomy,
Mhm.
and they have intrinsic value. But
You have
that's
to treat people as ends in themselves.
but that's why you have to treat them as ends in themselves. That's not what it means to do that.
That's not what it means to treat someone as an end in and of themselves.
Yeah, this is what and
Well, to treat someone as an end means to not treat them as a means, basically, because in his theory, you're either a means or you're an end. So,
Yeah.
if does that make sense?
They also talk about perfect duties and imperfect duties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, perfect duties. It's doing or abstaining from certain acts. While imperfect is just like means actions that help us pursue goals.
Right. Yeah.
And you also can't be like violating the perfect duties to pursue an imperfect duties.
Yeah, like I promise not to lie. It's like one.
Or that one example that you gave that like you want to go to Hollywood but you don't have money to live there, so you like
Maybe GoFundMe,
yeah.
that you're dying from cancer and you use the money for your career.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
So the imperfect duty there is trying to go. You have to
Like
go to Hollywood.
you're living your dream and
Yeah.
but you're violating the perfect duty of like lying.
Yeah.
Like you got that money by lying to people.
You can't do that, even if it's for an imperfect duty.
Yeah, even though like you're living
Right.
your life and you're doing this and that, you lied to get there. You scam people.
So it's like, yeah.
Can't
So
mix.
even if it's fulfilling it, if you kind of cheat the way up,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah,
count.
that's violates the second formulation. Treating people like equals.
Yeah.
Like I ain't gonna make it better.
Lena rewrite Kant's moral theory.
Go back in time, tell us about it. Hey, no, you're wrong.
Okay, next question.
Are we
Oh, I also want to talk about real quick. Kant looks at motivations very particularly in this one rather than consequences.
Yeah.
So he talks about kind of
Mm.
not if the ending action or the ending result of something was good or not.
Yeah.
It talks about like where's the intention behind it,
Right.
the motivation behind it.
He
Yeah.
doesn't consider consequences at all.
But wasn't there also-
Consequences aren't a result of it. Go ahead.
Wasn't it, sorry to catch up, but wasn't there something else where like your duties what mattered, even like if the outcome was something bad or something
So
else?
that's the point, like the motivations kind of.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You would have known your duty because it would have the term your duty would have been your intentions.
Like your maximum though.
The maximum is basically kind of more or less a word he uses for like
Like your rule or principle.
the entirety of all your reasonability. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think it's more or less like a synonym.
Bro, that pissed me off, bro, when she said that.
So what?
She said, maxim was like an important word. Like, you could just substitute it.
Oh, I saw your
Oh,
face.
because yeah, I think the distinction she was trying to make is that maxim is a word as opposed to the terms that he uses in his argument. So like, method is a word, but
Okay.
Oh,
Number
yeah,
four.
what
What
does
is?
mean?
In what ways?
Wait, no, please.
Sorry.
No, just not. You can read after. What does she mean by method when she did this?
the categorical imperative, his word,
Oh, it's the- it's the method.
it's the method he uses. Yeah. So that's why method would just
You
be
can go.
a word.
I'm joking.
Okay.
You can go.
In what ways is Kant's approach to how to determine which action is the moral one different from Aristotle's approach?
Oh yeah. Well, this goes right into what we're talking about. You know, Kant doesn't look at the consequences of actions at all.
No. Aristotle was character though, not consequences.
Yeah, no, but I was talking about Kant. But then, yeah.
They're asking us to compare like the two.
Kant looks more at motivation, while Aristotle looks more like, are you aware, knowledge, and character? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's more
you know.
Yeah,
Who you are versus why you do things.
exactly. Aristotle would probably think of a good person as someone who takes time to immerse themselves in things, and Kant would probably see someone who takes time to think about everything they do as a good person.
The difference too is that Aristotle doesn't, or which one? Aristotle doesn't consider fundamental needs while Kant does.
Yeah. Yes, fundamental needs and some of those things that weren't quite as smoothed out in that time were later addressed by Kant in his argument. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why he will then also go into things like suicide and like other stuff, which are things that might not have necessarily been like they went into too taboo in that time to really kind of divulge and discuss them.
And yeah, I think Kant kind of emphasizes more duty, universal principles, while Aristotle focuses more on virtue, practical wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So for Aristotle, good for each person is based on whatever virtues you're pursuing. So good, you can have like everyone has their own set of virtues.
Yeah, it's like a
Good,
specialized
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And then for Kant, it's universal. Everyone has to do. Has
With
a
moral
code,
code, right?
imperative.
Right, and that is the trade-off for it being a very cohesive structure. If everyone were to think like Kant, then it
Then
would be
it
a
would
very
work.
cohesive society. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the trade-off of everyone's value and duty is more or less the same.
Do we want to look at each example that they gave and then compare it to, in Kant's examples, and then compare it to how Aristotle would take that?
Yeah.
So for the first one, it's giving an example of a man who was very depressed and weary, thinking it'd be better off to just end his life. And Kant argues that this is not in the moral code because it would not be okay applied universally.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then also,
Everyone would be able to do it.
He also
But
says
his-
it violates the perfect duty, maybe?
But it says that his self-love
The,
cannot become a universal law. Nature.
yeah, that's right. Violates his own. What is it?
I think it violates the perfect duty, because like the perfect duties are like, keep promise, tell truth, don't like commit suicide.
It would be that kind of thing, yeah,
And it
because
falls under the thing.
yeah, and you'd also be treating yourself as a means to get to that end, which is the end of suffering.
So it kind of falls under both. It kind of
Yeah,
That's a
it
good
could,
test,
but it's nevertheless definitely, at least in Kant's way of looking at it, morally wrong to do so.
yeah.
Makes sense.
And then so for Aristotle's point of view, however,
He would, likely still argue that it's wrong, but he would have to acknowledge the fact that someone might not be a bad person just because they killed themselves.
also a different motivation because
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, exactly.
he's focused on like him and only this is more individually applied than it is universally.
Exactly, yeah, so it would.
Case by case situation. I feel like.
Yeah, that's a good way of like, analogizing it as a case by case. It's the maximum of your actions, as Kant would put it, in Aristotle's view, is more of like, it's more based on how you use your abilities. I think that's about what it's talking about.
Yeah. Aristotle actually does have something similar, not like an example or anything, but like we discussed in class what causes people to do wrong. Weakness, which is one of them. Knows better but gives in anyway. So,
Right, so like those kinds of things. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We could go on to number 2. So another man finds himself forced to borrow money, and he knows that he can't repay it. So he asks if it's improper to loan it anyway.
Yeah, I don't think Aristotle would consider that a good guy either.
Yeah.
Because he's vicious, he's lying, he doesn't have like any like honor.
Exactly.
It's-
It's going against the character code. Right?
Yeah,
It's like the whole example of the professor shows like in this way, like trying to go to Hollywood and like save like dying from cancer in a sense.
Yeah.
He's borrowing money because he needs it for himself to survive.
Right.
But the intent is like, I'm gonna lie because I'm not gonna pay you back.
Right. Yeah. So that line can't supersede you need to sustain yourself, which is ultimately not a bad thing.
Number 3.
So that's just
Okay. A third.
you don't maximize your potential because you're comfortable at where you're at.
Right. Yeah. So you don't. Yeah.
So like say you could be like this insane like famous drummer, but
Right,
you're happy in your life in welding.
Yeah. So I don't drum. I just weld.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think both Aristotle and Kant would agree.
No, that's not virtuous.
Well,
Okay,
yes.
let's
Go ahead.
finish.
Okay. I would say, because of the way Aristotle looks at things, if you can ultimately attain, like I said before, he would like to see people immerse themselves in their specific thing that they can, what's it called? Become really good at, right? And
I argue.
okay, just start.
I argue that I think it would be case by case again, or like kind of a little bit more of a gray area, because virtue in his mind is the intermediate between extremes.
Right. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like say that new job is like super like taxing on you, and then it would be like too much hard work versus like no work at all, and then where you were at right now would be that intermediate.
Yeah.
Then that would be virtue for him.
Yeah, so Aristotle would be chill with you, I guess.
Yeah. See.
Like,
well,
if you're
I
still,
don't-
like working hard.
Perhaps it's only if Aristotle doesn't, however, think that you're too far in the left, where you're not really, you haven't quite reached your excellency yet. You're still dragging
That's why
because
it's
you're
case
not
by case.
fully
You gotta
utilized.
be a good welder, so you can't be like bare.
Because on the skill,
minimum.
we're using the skill, right? The example we got.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, you went from like being broke, you know, having no jobs, like, all right, you know, now you got a job, and that's like gonna encourage to where like it's taxing on you. You're like, you know, fuck this job, I leave, and then you're broke again, no job, so now you become a fool.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on each person. So it doesn't. Each person has a different scale.
It
So-
could, but I think Aristotle, case by case, would be more likely. If you heard a bunch of situations like this, he'd probably want people to try and maximize their potential on average.
Yeah.
I think based on the other things that he said.
So yeah, I guess they probably still agree.
All right, and then a fourth man, for whom things are going well, sees that others, whom he could help, have to struggle with great hardship. Okay, so this one
What
is
concern of mine is it?
right.
He
This,
doesn't want to help people in need, pretty much.
yeah, this.
So I think this one is self-explanatory. Aristotle
They
would
would
not
both agree. They would both agree.
Yeah.
would not pass with this one,
This, yeah, because you wouldn't want to do that for every con. You wouldn't want to do that for everyone, right? And then also,
or not also treating them as ends in themselves.
right, by
Yeah.
not helping you, but be treating them as means,
Yeah.
or you just not be treating them as ends.
And then on, it wouldn't be
Yes.
acting virtuous because it would be acting according to good character.
Right.
Yeah. Selfish person.
Yep.
Is that the last one?
What other interesting things do we find in the text?
Oh yeah. Should I ask that question again?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So we like we talked about it, right? Like Kant's moral theory, Kant's moral theory isn't really practically applicable because it makes you really easy to take advantage of.
Right.
It's just if like one person doesn't follow it.
Yeah, which is when we talked about the benefits, right? That's the trade-off, is that it would be super easy to take advantage of a Kantian.
but he has the
I
practical
don't know what I want to
imperative.
call them, Kantians.
Second formulation is called the practical imperative. It's to treat everyone not just as a means, but also as an end in and of themselves. So
Do you have
if someone did
hypothetical
just
here?
that, no, don't worry about it. If someone did that though, if someone just considered everyone as an end in and of themselves, would you still consider them a good person?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, why? Lena?
Because
Why, Lena?
because I think we need to think about situations where people aren't involved or agents aren't involved, because that kind of removes the ends themselves completely from the picture, and relies just on the universal law. And I think if something doesn't pass that, it could pass the ends themselves, but not pass the universal law, in which it wouldn't be considered moral.
Yeah,
So-
that's both, yeah.
For example, say someone were to cut down a tree. So, as it ends in themselves, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not hurting anybody or affecting anybody directly, right?
Yeah.
So, however, if it was applied as universal law and everybody cut down a tree, we'd be very much affected from that in our environment.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be considered moral.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess it depends on like how many trees you cut down, right? So.
I guess it does, but
has
don't
to
you
be-
argue at a certain
Stop.
point it becomes semantic to get into
Yeah,
that?
no, but I think the thing we need to like acknowledge is Kant, you have to be a rational person.
Yes.
So if you cut down that tree, or just say you cut down like 10 trees, you can't say that doesn't affect other people.
Right. Because you'd have to apply rational reasoning process,
So
which would
you
probably
have to
be
be a rational.
But what if it's just like my own tree, my own island?
Yeah, so then you would still be a good person, but and not everyone can do that. So
Yeah,
that's
but then
what-
if it's a universal law, it's
yeah, then you can't. So I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel like you can respect people as ends in themselves, but not necessarily be like the greatest person or like a good person.
Yeah.
I feel like-
Because
And it depends on, sorry.
oh, I don't know what I was gonna say.
And it also depends on what everyone's like. This is just one perspective to keep in mind. This is only one moral code, right? But there's so many
Yeah.
different like
Y-
versions
right.
of what people think are okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, all Kant is doing here and all Aristotle has been doing is just arguing this is the way I think it works. There's
Exactly.
nothing definitively they can do that would prove it.
So
Yeah, that was just theories of theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
there were 3 different theories I think she touched on, right?
yeah, motivation, consequences, and character.
No, different types of theories. It was
Oh, axiology, epistemology,
Oh,
ontology.
yeah,
ontology,
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Oh my
There
God.
we go.
Yeah.
Where's my memo bag?
Dude, I always knew.
I'm thinking about where
Yeah.
mine is. I don't know.
I always knew everything came from turtles. Get it?
Everything came from what?
Turtles.
Oh, yeah, the turtles.
So good.
Yeah,
Tur-
archaeology.
Oh, the
and
example.
Turtleness. I thought that was funny.
No,
Wait,
yeah.
what is that?
To wrap up, is there anything else you would like to discuss?
Wait. Wait.
You good, bro? Are you constipated?
I
I'm not
think
using
he has a lot to. He has a big conclusion coming.
We break this down for y'all.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have given them the videos then.
Yeah, just cook real quick.
No.
Oh, I thought you were like actually gonna say something. I was like, okay. Alright, is the video done?
Oh wait,
Yeah, we basically completed them.
another theory of
Wait,
Aristotle
go for
is passions versus reasons. About being virtuous.
Oh yeah, was that Aristotle who argued that?
Yeah,
Right, yeah. There's that as well.
so just remember that.
That's
Yeah,
all.
and I guess passion would be very synonymous with motivation.